In a quiet Arizona town, Willie Inmon, just 21, used a set of guiding principles when appointing himself judge, jury, and executioner of the men that he killed.
My family's been anti-Semitic for over 2,000 years. That ain't gonna change.
Inmon kept company with members of a white supremacist organization, one which defines all too clearly who its enemies are.
To us, the Aryan Brotherhood, the gang here in America, that's a total slap in the beliefs of our country.
If someone steps out of line, the self-styled vigilante felt that he had every right to kill.
He's another drag on society, another one that society won't miss. He's cleaning up the town.
Inman's descent to serial killer status began on a ranch, which became his shooting gallery.
Willie didn't hesitate to kill animals, and he was slowly progressing to that stage.
Willie Inmon saw himself as an avenging deliverer of justice. But what was really going on inside the mind of a serial killer? Small town Arizona. Fewer than 6,000 people live in this community, and not too much happens in this part of the world.
In Arizona, in the southwest corner, along the border of Mexico, lies two little towns, Springerville and St. John's. These two towns are like many towns across the United States. 9-to-5, working class, blue-collar people.
St. John's is a small town. There's not too many people. Everyone that does live here either works for the school, the jail, or on a ranch. And it's a good place to live if you don't like a lot of company. The majority of the people are nice and caring people.
In August 2009, a teenager goes missing. His name, Ricky Flores.
Ricky Flores is a 16-year-old troubled kid, some might describe him as. He's had some drug problems, messing around with drugs, some criminal mischief, some people would say maybe a little local town hooligan, but nothing major. But who else is Ricky Flores? He's somebody who was starting to turn his life around. Got off of drugs, did his time in juvie, was now back out on the street.
Married, too, to Jessica.
One of his first real relationships, and he really loved her. She loved him. They had a kid together, a daughter. You know, all he really wanted to do was support his family the best he could at 16 years old. He just wanted to show some sort of initiative that he was working towards something better to better himself and put his family in a better position.
So disappearing was not what was expected of Ricky. Detective Lucas Rodriguez called in on the Flores family to gauge why Ricky's mum, Maura, was so concerned.
I talked to Maura for about 45 minutes to an hour, asking her, and she said some of the strange things that, well, some of the things that concerned her is that when Ricky would leave or something, he would take clothes, but he didn't take any clothes at this time.
The Flores family and the police were particularly worried because of who Ricky had last been seen with, someone a little older that he knew.
I knew the last person he was with. I just made one connection. So did they, and William Inmon.
William Inmon. Inmon, different kind of kid. Mostly, I know him as saying hi to him, seeing him out in the street, and he'll approach me. I say, "What's up? How you doing?" He says, "Okay." He just a little odd, dresses mostly in camouflage, army fatigues, carries a knife, just likes hunting, the army, likes his guns, and that's pretty much Willie.
Guns played a big part in the life of Willie Inmon, a fact which a friend of his and of Ricky's couldn't exactly miss.
He liked his guns a lot, you know, like probably gave him a sense of, you know, power. You know, he would talk about them all the time.
Linda Papadopoulos has been pulling together the evidence about Willie Inmon, trying to understand what made him tick.
We know that William Inmon grows up with a family basically neglects him. They had problems with the law.
I know that his mom wasn't around for a lot of his life.
So this little boy is very much left to his own devices.
Most of the time I saw him alone or with friends. I never saw him with his family, I guess, per se, with his mom or dad or anything like that. Mostly it was him and friends and stuff like that.
Willie spent most of his time at the ranch that his family owned a few miles out of town. There, he had constructed a makeshift firing range. Detectives had cause to occasionally call on Willie.
We came across a smell of death, or of a stench of something rotting, meat rotting. We knew that Willie was there because his car was there, but we walked around the ranch and calling for him and stuff like that, and we came a couple of a dead cow hanging. More sure probably Willie used it for meat, but he didn't own any cattle. From what I gather, Willie didn't hesitate to kill animals.
There was just something odd about Willie Inmon. Nearly 10 years older than Ricky Flores and Joseph Elam, Willie Inmon still hung around them, waiting for them to get out of school, dropping in on them when they were smoking drugs.
Yeah, I could always tell, you know, that guy, there's something wrong with him, you know, because, like, we're over here blazing and, you know, having a good time, laughing and stuff, and he's just, you know, talking about, you know, his grandpa and Nazi shit and whatever, you know.
His grandpa, Willie would tell them, was a German flying ace, a matter of Inman family pride. He'd tell that to the police one day, too.
My grandpa was the greatest Luftwaffe pilot any pilot ever existed. Only one to receive over 1,200 kills.
A telling piece of evidence for criminal profiler Donna Youngs.
In direct contrast to the lawlessness of an ill discipline of his parents, Inman did have this grandfather who seemed to have this Nazi background that to him would have seemed to be the very personification of authority and discipline, of standards, of idealism, of something to look up to in the way that he couldn't look up to his parents.
He was just a peculiar dude, you know, he was just off the wall and the stuff he would say and how he tried to present himself, you know. I didn't like him.
So that was Willie Inmon in summer 2009. A peculiar dude, one who had been neglected as a child, with an obsession for his grandfather's Nazi past and for guns. He hung around with Ricky Flores too, and 8 days after he had last been seen, nobody knew where Ricky was.
I just had a bad feeling about it, you know, the whole time, you know, when we're talking with Jessica, we're talking with his mom, you know, I just had a bad feeling.
Ricky is missing. Ricky has people who love him as well. They've made a missing persons report with the St. John's Police Department. And the last person that they could track Ricky being with was Willie.
So I jumped in his patrol car, we went out there, and by luck, we met with Willie and his girlfriend Stormy up there.
Stormy Williams, 20 years older than Willie, a troubled woman with learning difficulties.
Willie told me that he had taken, that they indeed, Ricky was at the ranch with him, and that they had gone, he talked to him about drugs and to stay away from drugs and stuff like that.
Willie may once have been a drug taker himself, but the older man wanted his younger friend to lay off the herb, as he called it. He didn't want Ricky to end up like Willie's mother.
My mother was like that. She loved her drugs, that's why I don't even talk to her anymore. It's been 7 years since I've talked to her. Straight out walked on her one day, kept telling me, oh, I fell off the bandwagon, whatever. Straighten your life up. Whole life she didn't. spent all the money on, before my dad was able to kick her out, spent all the money on drugs.
Oh, was that right?
And I didn't have nothing, no food, no nothing. But yeah, one time I remember Ricky was wanting to get off the crap, so I let him go out to my place for a couple of weeks and let him detox.
Inmon sees himself as someone who is able to kind of, better people in some way, and he tries to better those that are younger than him. So he speaks to Ricky Flores, and he describes this in quite a lot of detail, and says to him, look, you need to, put your life back on track, you need to stop the drugs.
By the age of 21, the mind of Willie Inmon seems to have settled on what people should and should not do.
Inmon found solace in clear ideas, in concrete ideas, in black and white, in right and wrong, because everything that he'd known as a child was confused and messy. So he would have found, psychologically speaking, he craved a clear agenda, a clear set of principles, and it didn't matter what those principles were. The clearer, the more absolutist, the better.
The final brushstroke in creating a picture of Willie Inmon in August 2009. What he thought right should be vigorously pursued, and what he thought was wrong should be punished. What was Willie's true purpose down on the ranch where he, his girlfriend Stormy, and Ricky Flores had gone around August 20th? Whatever had happened that day, Willie was sticking to his story when he spoke with detectives. He had no more than warned young Ricky off drugs.
I could care less what music you listen to and what you like to do. Just the drugs, man. Leave them alone. I tried so many times.
He talked to him about drugs and to stay away from drugs and stuff like that.
That was what Inmon said he was doing as he and Ricky Flores fooled around with guns on the ranch before moving on.
Then he said he took him back into town and dropped him off on 4th North and 13th West. He said that Ricky had received a phone call and says, hey, just drop me off here, I gotta bounce. Says Ricky pulled the car over and Ricky jumped out and took off.
And he bails out my back door, says, later, dog. We shake hands, and he leaves. And we drive from there, straight here through Springerville, from St. John's, the main road, right over to my girl's house, and we go to sleep for the night. And that is the last time I seen him.
Ricky Flores, 16, missing from home, and a friend of Willie Inmon, a gun-obsessed admirer of a Nazi grandfather who wanted to set the world straight and who had a shooting range down on the ranch. Officer Lucas Rodriguez and a fellow detective didn't believe Willie Inmon's story about dropping off Ricky Flores in St. John's.
We both had the same feeling that Ricky was hurt or that he was dead.
Ricky's friends were suspicious too, because they knew all about Willie Inmon's dangerous obsession.
He was just one of those dudes that, probably found power, like he wasn't physically strong, so he had to, have guns and stuff like that.
Willie Inmon soon gets another visit from the cops. A mind game was about to begin between Inmon and disbelieving detectives.
I spent about 2 hours interviewing Willie. During that time, I questioned him again on the story. Willie stuck to his gun, saying that he had dropped Ricky off. I kind of pressured him a little bit more and asking him, what's going on, Willie? Come on, tell me where Ricky is. As the interview progressed, I can see a lot of deception signs on Willie.
Inmon would later admit he was getting anxious about St. John's police.
I hate the St. John's police because they don't know anything. They don't even know the law.
Officer Lucas Rodriguez turned to a colleague in nearby Apache County, where murder squad detectives were based.
He goes, holy smokes, Lux, I think you're right. I think you're looking for a body, not somebody that's alive.
He set off for the home of Stormy Williams, where he suspected Willie Inmon was hanging out.
Went to the Springerville and executed a search warrant. There was no arrest warrant, there was no nothing like that. Willie was free to go. We were just looking for more evidence and stuff like that.
Willie runs down to the police station, and he sits in this interview room, and he's panting, and he's out of breath, and he's all excited because he thinks that the Springerville police are going to get the St. John police off his back.
During that time, Willie went to the Springerville department there, and he spoke with Chief West.
Steve West was the chief of police at the Springerville police office. He'd taken a call from Stormy complaining about police harassment at the hands of St. John's officers. Chief West first got a brief from Officer Lucas Rodriguez, then got back in touch with Stormy.
So what I did is I called up this young lady, his girlfriend, and I told her that they needed to let these guys, come over, and Mr. Inmon had threatened that he had a gun. So I asked them if they'd feel safer, leaving the house and coming up to the police department. And she said yes. And I said, well, then you leave your house and come straight up to the police department.
Willie Inmon's belief structure meant that for him, whatever had happened that day, he was in the right.
I try to be as law-abiding as possible.
Lucas Rodriguez, a St. John's police officer by contrast, had no right to be working in Springerville.
And I believe Willie was already talking to Steve West, and they had struck a rapport and stuff like that.
So bizarrely, he goes to the sheriff with the intention of kind of deflecting this focus on him and what he's done.
He walks in to see Chief West and complains.
So I'm tired of being harassed. They have no right coming to my girl's house, no right whatsoever. And last time they came here without a sheriff escort. They came in their St. John's police car out of jurisdiction. And they've broken the law. They searched her next door neighbor's house.
Willie builds up the Springerville police and says, you all should be handling what takes place in this town. You all are better than the St. John's police. Certainly you all can handle that. And Willie's trying to manipulate the Springerville police.
Chief Steve West was not about to be manipulated. He was about to hear a life story, and as he tried to win Willie's confidence, he listened attentively.
And I set Mr. Inmon in a room by himself and advised the other law enforcement that I did have them there at that time.
Tell me a little bit about who you are. Who is this Willie? Who are you, Willie?
He was very edgy when we started talking about some of the murders, some of the homicides that potentially happened.
And Willie starts to talk, and he starts to describe his childhood and how he's overcome parents who shun their responsibilities of parents. He described how his only companion was his dog.
Willie offered a version of a young man with down-to-earth, old-fashioned American values, hard-earned values.
Have you been in the service?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
82nd Airborne, 21.
Wow. Gosh, when did you get out?
I got out when I was 18.
Inmon would claim to have served in Afghanistan, to have killed many times. The military for Willie was a revered institution. According to psychologists, this was the classic behavior of somebody who deals in absolute right and absolute wrong, and it goes to the heart of understanding Willie Inmon, the young man with a messy childhood.
When you have that confused background, you'll be looking for anything which makes the world simple, which makes the world safe, which makes it clear who is in the right and who is in the wrong, because you've grown up not knowing, not understanding what's right, who's right.
Somebody comes over there I know of, don't know his name, but I know he's the one supplying and using with them.
He describes how he views himself as a hero almost, but he describes how he looks at the dredges of society, the drug users, criminals.
He talked a lot about, he didn't like drugs and that he was more than willing to take drugs off the street, whatever it took. He was more than willing to do what was necessary to make sure that that kids on the street didn't receive drugs.
Was killing Ricky Flores necessary? If so, Willie was not about to admit it.
What St. John's PD is asking you is they're asking you if you know the whereabouts of Ricky.
Correct.
And what's Ricky's last name?
Flores.
Flores. Okay, so they're asking you if you know the whereabouts of Ricky Flores. They're saying what? That you were the last one to see him?
Correct.
Right.
And that I know something, and they keep pressuring me like I do know something, which if I didn't, I would tell them because I want them off my backs. I'm tired of being harassed. They have no right coming to my girl's house, no right whatsoever.
He is trying to convince the police chief that they're hermano, that they're brothers, that they both are crime fighters, that they both view the world in the same way, and that they are like one. And Willie just keeps talking. And the police chief skillfully keeps saying, and then, what else? Tell me more.
Like how he thinks Ricky Flores should behave.
No, service would do that boy good, though.
Think it'd get him straightened out?
Yeah, it would. I think so.
He has almost these sort of vigilante tendencies. So this idea of kind of righting wrongs of the world, he sees himself almost as this sort of anti-hero, kind of going out there and kind of making sure karma happens for the people that are doing wrong.
Inmon reveals a lot during his recorded interview with Steve West.
During the interview, as we talked, it was really strange because Mr. Inmon, he had this affinity, number one, as far as being calm, to why he was there. He didn't seem upset about that at all. But the other thing was he had this affinity to talk about Nazism.
My family's been anti-Semitic for over 2,000 years. That ain't gonna change.
Ricky Flores' girlfriend and mother to his child, Jessica, was the daughter of a man who was allegedly a member of a white supremacist group called the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas. His name, Jeffrey Johnson.
Ricky had gotten in trouble with Jessica a lot because he was not allowed to come and visit her or be around her or anything like that. So I believe at one point Mr. Johnson and Melissa Johnson, the mom of Jessica Johnson, got a restraining order against Ricky and not allowed him to come around and be around Jessica. Well, it didn't matter because Jessica loved Ricky and she would sneak out of the house as well and go meet with him and vice versa.
Which Mr. Johnson did not like.
They couldn't have their daughter associate with this brown-skinned Ricky Flores.
Inmon had the means to kill down on the ranch. Willie knew Jeff Johnson. Did Inmon have two motives for killing Ricky Flores? The first, to get rid of a drug user from the streets, and the second, to do the bidding of a known white supremacist, to help establish himself as someone the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas could take as one of their own, to gain a sense of belonging.
Although he would not have admitted it, even to himself, there would have been some hidden shame about his parents within Inmon. So he would have been looking for an outlet, a way to direct that shame. So any organisation that gave him a weaker group, an inferior group, that labelled one part of society as weaker, gave him an outlet for the shame he felt towards his parents.
As the interview continued, it was not looking good for the Hispanic Ricky Flores, missing and last seen with Willie Inmon.
You can ask me the same question they keep asking me. Where is Ricky? I'll tell you the same thing. I don't know.
Throughout his time inside Springerville Police HQ, there was something Willie Inmon did not know about Stormy, his girlfriend.
Stormy's in the other room, and as part of the other plan, they're going to play each other against one another.
It was decided to tell Stormy that Willie had confessed to the homicide. Detective Nickel did present that kind of information to the idea to Stormy. And Stormy actually started talking and said yes, they had killed Ricky, and went into detail on how they had killed him and how they had taken him back to town and how they had buried him.
In the interview room, the mind game is up for Willie, and he's lost.
You don't talk until I ask you to talk, okay?
Yes, sir.
I know exactly what happened. I know where the body's at. I know where he was shot. I know where you buried him on the blue. I know where you burn him. I got your tire tracks. I got your shoe tracks.
What?
We finally got him to admit that he indeed did shoot this kid.
Just tell us what happened, Willie. That's the biggest thing. Run us through it.
Oh my God.
Well, I mean, stuff happens. We know that.
Yes. And I'm telling you, I did not want to kill the kid. It was not murder, I can tell you that much.
Okay.
My God, I can't believe it's
Just tell us
Well,
what
that's
was
okay. Yeah, just tell us the story.
He shot at me and hit my dad's truck, and I fired back. I didn't want to hit him.
Willie did disclose that the homicide had actually occurred at his ranch, and that he had shot Willie at the ranch. I believe he shot him in the head.
He said they were both out at the site east of St. John's, and that they were out there and they were target practicing. And they started shooting cans and whatnot, and Ricky wanted to shoot the rifle, and so he let him shoot the rifle, and Mr. Inmon said that he was standing by his car and a bullet hit the window next to him. He said that he took that as an aggressive move, and he got his rifle and started firing at Ricky.
This was a story of self-defense. Willie, trying to dissuade young Ricky from being a drug user, had brought him out to the ranch. Whilst recreationally shooting on the firing range, things had just gone wrong.
So what does Willie tell the police? He reveals to them, yes, I'm the one responsible who killed Ricky Flores. And he goes on with a story, again, his superhero story. He doesn't like people who uses drugs. He was trying to help out the town. He was ridding society of somebody who wasn't worth anything. And that was his whole motivating purpose.
But that was not the story that Stormy Williams had told, and it was not true. Investigators soon uncovered that Inmon thought killing Ricky Flores might make him money from the father of Ricky's girlfriend, Jeff Johnson.
You see, Ricky's girlfriend, her parents loved her. They hated Ricky.
It would not look good to Mr. Johnson that, since he's a white supremacist, that his daughter had a kid from a Hispanic kid.
They couldn't have their daughter associate with this brown-skinned Ricky Flores.
After shooting Ricky on the ranch outside Springerville, Inmon and Stormy loaded Ricky's body onto the truck before heading to the Johnson family home in St. John's.
Then we simply moved to the presentation of the prey, the celebration, the victory, the plaudits, by taking the body to be shown to Johnson.
He had to move the body to St. John's because that is where he was going to get paid. He's not this superhero. He's greedy. This is all about the buck, the almighty dollar.
Hey, can I get that $5,000? You know, I killed Ricky. He's in the truck right now. You know, and the dad was like, you know, what the heck? Like, you know, that, like, get out of here. You know.
The whole reason for Willie bringing the body over into town in the beginning is just, instead of just going through the back roads and going away from town, was that he came over and showed proof to Mr. Johnson that he had actually taken care of the job and killed Ricky. William said that Mr. Johnson got mad at him for bringing the body, and that got $20 from him for gas, and that was all, and he took off.
Jeffrey Johnson denied ordering a hit on Ricky Flores. He may have made idle remarks about not liking him to Inmon, He and his wife Melissa would eventually be found guilty of hindering the prosecution in the case of the murder of Ricky Flores. Jeff Johnson would be sent to jail for 7 years. Melissa given probation. Ricky Flores, in Inmon's mind, was a drug user, so deserved to be punished. He was Hispanic and had fathered a child with a white girl, so deserved to die.
I think there is evidence to attest to the fact that he sees himself as this kind of vigilante figure, as someone that's going to kind of even the stakes. In the case of Ricky Flores, we know that his girlfriend's parents actually speak to him and say, you know, we think Ricky's a no-good, he's terrible for our daughter, and in fact takes the body to these parents of this girl to say, look what I've done, as if seeking some sort of, you know, approval, recognition, reward. So this very much feeds into this sense that he needed to belong, he needed to be acknowledged, he needed to have an identity as somebody that's contributing something.
He wanted to, you know, feel some sort of power. There's some messed up part in his head that, you know, said, if I can kill these people and, you know, people can't figure out about it, then I'm obviously doing something right. You know, I'm taking bad people off the street. That's what he claimed his thought process was.
Understanding Willie Inmon is about appreciating his need to belong in the army, to be respected by a white supremacist group. As he was interviewed at Springerville, he also revealed that he wanted to belong with law enforcers.
I try to be as law-abiding as possible.
Inmon was in the grip of what we call a revenge and mission narrative. And this is a storyline driving a person's life forward where they believe that it is their duty to right some wrong that has been done. Inmon's mission was to get rid of what he called undesirables, anybody doing anything illegal or immoral in any way, according to his judgment.
Inmon had contented himself that Ricky deserved to die, and Willie was the man to kill him. Had he reached the same conclusion about other people? As detectives probed Willie Inmon about the death of Ricky Flores, they had 2 unsolved cases on file. Was William Nicholas Inmon a serial killer? If guilty, he should confess, they told him. He might avoid the death penalty, even one day look forward to being released.
I spent 23 years doing murders. I've solved murders in this town right here on the reservation with the FBI and everywhere. I have people that are in prison writing me letters thanking me for putting them in a position to tell the truth. To this day, I got people that get out of prison because every time somebody gets out, they have to notify me.
Did Willie want to live? Yes, he did.
I'm afraid of death, period.
Two years before the murder of Ricky Flores, a 72-year-old had been found dead in his trailer on land adjacent to Willie Inmon's ranch.
He actually lived at Elk Valley Ranch on lot 117, just east of St. John's. He was neighbors with a guy by the name of Stormy McGarriger.
He had been murdered and been shot, and the homicide had gone unsolved since 2007.
Detectives were tipped off whilst interviewing Inmon. Willie Inmon was the killer.
Stoney's murder will not seek the death penalty or murder one. Exact words. He said the clock is running. If you can help us on that murder.
I have no idea on that at all. I do not.
William McGarriger, known as Stormy, had a troubled and troublesome past. He had pleaded guilty many years before to child molestation in New Hampshire when he'd been working with a scouting organisation. He had also worked with young men using an alias of William Stoney in Florida. Eventually, he turned up as Stormy McGarriger in East Arizona. Willie learns of his past and that he has cash in his trailer.
This is a bad guy, you know, he's got lots of money, where a lot of people don't. You know, there's rumors about, you know, sexual misconduct with young people.
Weeks after confessing to the murder of Ricky, Inmon decides to take up the offer of trading the truth of his crimes in exchange for his life. At this point, he becomes totally committed to telling the police everything.
He switches from seeing the police as the enemy to seeing the police as the people that he wants to get on side, and then suddenly we get the confessions, suddenly we get the complying with everything, trying to please the police.
With an accomplice, Willie had decided it was time to take the law into his own hands. Stormy had moved to the wrong place, living next to a man with definite ideas of what should happen to bad guys, and one who had an arsenal of weapons.
The story of Stormy, the child molester. Willie ridding society of a cancerous plague that would wreak havoc on the children in the community. The police are interested. And they're listening, and then they're letting him talk. And Willie becomes the instructor, and the detectives the students. Because school's in session, and Willie's gonna lead this lesson. And he describes in detail what he did to Stormy.
He had shot him in his bed through the trailer window.
He describes how he sneaks up to the house while Stormy's asleep.
If you kind of look at his method of killing, it's very military, right? So not only does he wear these fatigues, not only is he interested in the guns, but it's quite methodical. He kind of goes into the dead of night. It's as if it's a covert operation. He cuts through the screen.
He has his rifle. He readies the rifle and sticks the barrel through the hole in the screen. Bam! One time. Bam! 2 times. 12 times he pulls the trigger. You talk about a coward. Stormy is asleep, and he shoots him in the darkness of the night on the outside, shooting inside the house.
This is someone that sees himself as a vigilante, as an anti-hero. I'm doing a service to the community. I'm standing up, for what's right, where other people just let it go.
$3,000 was thought to have been inside the trailer and was not there when Stormy McGarriger's body was eventually found. 2 years would pass between his murder and Inman's confession, which he offered in detail to justify his actions.
Willie would go on to explain it's all about the child molestation. He's getting rid of a cancer. He's a tumor on society. But was he? Or was the real motive why Willie had to go inside the house? Because he knew there was money inside of the house. And so he had to go inside the house, and he wanted to make sure that Stormy was dead. So he kills Stormy and searches for the money.
The other outstanding case on the police files in the St. John's, Springerville, Apache County area was the death of Vietnam War veteran Daniel Acton, known locally as Hummerdan, because he constantly hummed music. Another Inman victim, and for spurious and untrue allegations.
He's cleaning up the town, so he shot him. He didn't like Daniel because he was humming Dan. Got tired of the humming. What is all this silliness and nonsense of all this humming? So he shot him. He continues to talk about humming Dan being a drug user, humming Dan being irritating to the people in town.
There was something else Inman didn't like about Hummer Dan.
Inman believes that Dan actually kills his dog. And you got to remember, for Inman, this dog is the most kind of consistent friend he's ever had. He was in his life more regularly and consistently than even his parents were. So this would have been hugely traumatic for him. So the idea that I'm going to go out and I'm going to kill someone that killed my best friend, well, that's just retribution, right? That's just tit for tat. And that's exactly how he describes it.
So he shot Dan. Then he takes Dan's body and he buries Daniel. No different than a dog would bury a bone in a shallow grave in a field.
Inman almost seemed proud as he took detectives on the tour of his killing grounds.
He took us to the ranch where he had killed Ricky. He took us to the place where Daniel Ekman had been killed. And then he took us to where Stormy had been killed and how he killed Stormy.
And that was the end of the story that Willie Inman told police. He was a killer who felt he had a right to kill. He had stopped not because he was struck by remorse, but because he got caught. His challenge had been to commit the crimes.
What matters here is the mission, is the accomplishment of the mission. It's not about the victims as individuals, and it's not about the perpetrator. So in that context, it's easy to see that it's the numbers that counted. The more victims, the more significant the mission that has been achieved. So yes, these offences would have carried on.
Those around the tiny community, shocked by the deaths, were not surprised at the identity of the killer.
They were not surprised. They were more like, that doesn't surprise me, or more like, well, I can see him doing it. Just an odd kid. Yeah, I can see him doing something like that, but just surprised at how many he had done. Especially to a friend too, that he considered a friend, and just the day before, or that when he went missing told the mom, "Hey mom." Just heartless. Sign of a guy has no heart, no remorse, no soul, I guess.
He did this with malice. He knew where he was going, he knew what he was doing, he knew how he was going to do it. He planned it, staged it, and completed it. So if that isn't vigilantism, nothing is. And he's doing it for a cause that he thinks is right, whether it was barking dogs, whether it was because they're a dope slinger, or whether they were a child molester, or whatever. He always had this reason in the back of his mind for doing that. But reality is, the only time that I saw Mr. Inmon remorseful was just on the first initial confession.
I felt so bad. I'm crying right now. I told him the only thing that makes me cry is taps. And I told him, I realized something, that I had got so, I felt so bad at the end when I had buried him, that not only did I pick a good spot, that I hoped somebody had buried me in someplace nice. I gave him a 21 gun salute. I did.
Did you?
Yes.
He was not remorseful at all on any of the rest of the interviews that we did with him.
What truly was going on inside the mind of the serial killer Willie Inmon? Some believe he's an example of pure evil.
I think that I've always wrestled with the fact that if we're born this way, or we're made a certain way, or it's life circumstances. To a point, I think we're born a certain way. And I think Willie was born that way.
Others believe that he had a warped sense of right and wrong, justifiable and unjustifiable.
But I think there's no doubt that actually Inmon saw himself as a vigilante, as someone who was there to right wrongs.
For the brother of one of the victims, Inmon lived in a big world which was actually very small, and even then he could not find a place within it to be accepted. Killing was his way of making a mark.
He just wanted to show that he had some sort of power. You know, he wasn't worthless. You know, he could make these kind of bad things happen. You know, he thought that he would be remembered as, you know, a mastermind of some sort.